folks, this is all the fruit waking up on the slopes of Lago di Garda. One of the most beautiful views you can imagine, and immediately starting to notice things. I think it's a professional illness. Those young olives here, they're actually very old olives, and all the trees have been cut down. See, this was a nice old olive tree. It has been chainsawed down. Same goes for this one. For this one. And for this one. All this was an old olive grove, and I thought it was just abandoned. But no, it was cut down. Why? Now it's being taken over by the local macchia, and of course also by the suckers of the olives. And because this one terrace has been made into a hiking trail, it's cleared, and they have cleared all the macchia, but just left 2 suckers from every olive tree. This is very important for a lot of different reasons. Firstly, what happens to this olive grove? Black coal. It's possible that the olive grove burned down. I would say what happened is it was abandoned, it was overgrown by macchia, then the macchia started burning, and the olive trees died or were heavily damaged, and then they were cut down, and then the macchia came back, the olives started suckering, and maybe 10 years later this trail was made. That's my idea. What else could have happened? A harsh frost, but the other olives in the area are not damaged. Strange. Yeah, tell me, why would somebody cut down an ancient olive grove? Must have happened sometime around the year 2000, I would say. Another important thing this shows you is the difficulty to date olives, to age olives. Look at that. So the old stem has died for whatever reason, and the farmers, or in this case the landscapers, have left 2 of the suckers standing, 2 suckers on different sides of the old stem. It's consistent pretty much everywhere here. Over there in the background they left only 1. I don't know, maybe there was not another strong enough one. Here they left one which is branching, but here 2. Here again 1, but maybe they tried another one and it didn't work. This must have been quite a big one. Look at that. However, is it possible that 100 or 200 years ago the same thing happened and they left 2 suckers here? And if somebody comes here after 100 years, what will they say? Will they say those 2 things here are suckers, or will they say there was one giant olive stem here over 1 meter in diameter and parts of it died down, and those are actually 2 parts of the old trunk? Yeah. That shows us that when finding something like this, something that looks like remnants of one single old olive trunk, but we are not sure, we have no proof, that we should be careful. We want it to be remnants of one single olive trunk, but it's also possible that there are suckers which were left to develop after the olive trunk in the middle got destroyed. Very important for assuming the age. I mean, yeah, if they are suckers, the olive tree will also be very old. But it's a difference whether there was one trunk 1 meter 20 in diameter here, or if there was one trunk, it died, then maybe they left those two suckers here. They died 100, 200 years later, and then they left two other suckers. It would still make the tree a couple hundred years old, but probably not as old as if those two things, if you would observe them after 100 years or so, were the remnants of one single trunk and not suckers coming up from the roots of this single trunk. The soil here, by the way, seems to be extremely poor and of course also extremely basic. But look at that. We are in July, in a year with enough rain. I don't think they've done any weed whacking here this year, because the grass on the other terraces looks just as high, but yeah, it's neither high nor dense. Pretty poor land. I guess that's why it was used for an olive grove and not for some more demanding other crop. And even the olive grove didn't make it. Beautiful cyclamen. Is it cyclamen hederifolium? Maybe, but it's a little bit early for it to bloom. In Bulgaria it usually blooms in September, and here in July. Interesting. Well, I didn't check which one this is, but tell me, which cyclamen is this which blooms around Lago di Garda in July? Oh, moreover, wait, hederifolium, I think it has the leaves in spring and the flowers in autumn, so this should definitely be a different species. Well, poor soil means a lot of flowers, some heather, some spurge, some Toicrium chamedris, some globularia, what is this, Knautzia. A lot of them are important herbs. Forgot the name of this one. Beautiful stuff. Yeah, it looks like a typical Mediterranean countryside. But remember, folks, we are far away from the Mediterranean here. We are in the Mediterranean of the north. The shores of Lago di Garda. Mom, I want to go to the Mediterranean. We have Mediterranean at home. And as soon as the Italians found that there is Mediterranean at home, yeah, the rest is history. Interesting that the only two important evergreen components here are the olives and the holm oak, both the two most important indicators for Mediterranean climate, but all the other stuff is summer green. Mana ash, Saskatoon, well, figs, the Judas tree seems to have been planted around here. I also think that the smoke bush is planted around here. Don't exactly know which Fabaceae this here is. And there's quite a lot of wild pistachio growing here, but right now I don't see it. Well, I do see it here. Oh, it has been cut down. Oh, stay away from Clematis recta. All the clematises are phototoxic, this thing here. And also some hop hornbeam. Basically, not exactly a Mediterranean macchia, only the most important macchia trees are present, but the other ones are absent. But a Mediterranean macchia mixed with the sub-Mediterranean forest. I wonder how big the orchid diversity is in those olive plantations. Well, first again, this one, young suckers Usually they grow too close together, so they are suckers. So something has happened to this plantation too. But also in the Mediterranean, those olive plantations are very important orchid and other flower habitats, and very important habitats for plants and animals. We are in July now, a little bit late for orchids here, but I still wonder how diverse the orchids will be. It's on limestone, so they should be pretty diverse. The season is over for Prunus mahaleb, tiny bitter cherry of dry environments. Now those are basically mummified. Here is one late fruit which is just half ripe. And pretty bitter. Here a nice big wild pistachio or turpentine tree. It doesn't have edible pistachios, but it was used for different chemical purposes in the old times. The walkway is quite impressive, going here along the steep cliffs. Ciclopista del Garda. Well, I hope they'll allow us to walk here. So why is Lake Garda called the Mediterranean of the North? Not because of all the windsurfers, but because of the very specific climate. You know, Italy, the coastlines of the Italian peninsula, of course, they are in the Mediterranean and they have mostly a very Mediterranean climate. But north of the Mediterranean peninsula, there is the giant Po Flat, which is closed on three sides, north, west and south, but is wide open to the ice-cold winds from Siberia from the east. And north of this giant Po Flat, there are of course the giant peaks of the Alps. Here around the lake, they go up to around 2,000 meters. Further away, often over 4,000. And yeah, east, west and of course north of the lake, the Alpine climate is incredibly cold. But also south of the lake, the giant Po Flat, it has super hot summers, but also super cold winters. Those alpine lakes nestled in the southern slopes of the Alps have a very mild, almost subtropical climate. The western lakes like Lago Maggiore and Lago di Como have a more Atlantic climate. Lago di Garda has a more Mediterranean climate. This is also reinforced by the fact that around Lago di Garda you have mostly limestone, which is a rock that dries out quite quickly and the water percolates to the rock quite quickly. Here the shores have a USDA zone 9 hardiness. And yeah, that's more or less classic Mediterranean, only that we are not in the Mediterranean here. We are far, far away from the Mediterranean in the Alps. If you look at the vegetation, if you would show me this, I would say totally Mediterranean. I would see some of the cooler areas of the Mediterranean because I see a lot of manna ash here. But apart from that, big holm oak macchia with an olive here and there, and the planted pine and cypress here and there. Classic Mediterranean. They say wherever the holm oak dominates the natural vegetation, there is Mediterranean climate, and wherever you can successfully plant olives, there is also Mediterranean climate. Yeah, but as I said, we are not in the Mediterranean. We are over 100 kilometers further north than the northernmost bay of the Mediterranean here in this area. An amazing climate, a unique climate, a climate also incredibly important for the survival of nature in Europe. See here on the west coast of Lago di Garda we have Monte Baldo. I don't know which of those peaks Monte Baldo is because I didn't check. This is called the Garden of Europe because of the incredible amount of endemic species here. How did they survive here? Well, the lake back then was no lake, it was a giant glacier. It was a giant river of ice. However, the highest peaks around here were ice-free because they were just too steep. It's not that they were too warm, they were too steep. And right now there are still many dozens of plants which don't grow anywhere in the world than on those peaks. And the idea is that during the ice ages, a lot more of our European vegetation as we know it today was hiding here on top of Monte Baldo, probably a lot of our Alpine vegetation. And only after the ice age ended, this vegetation spread and covered the Alps again. Without this mountain here, European vegetation would be a lot poorer than it is now. So there is no way to overestimate the importance of, which one was it? I should really check which one is Monte Baldo. Okay, checked one. Is this one over there? Probably the the mountain in all of Europe and at least in all of the Alps most rich in endemics. There might be other there are similar mountains further south in the Mediterranean, but for the survival of the Alpine and Central European flora, this mountain here was instrumental. Actually, for decades I wanted to visit Monte Baldo, and now, since I'm mostly fruit hunting, I'm staying down here at the warm shores of Lake Garda and not even thinking about climbing this mountain. Probably if they saw me even trying, they would kick me out. Down here we have the giant reed or Spanish reed, the bamboo of the Mediterranean. It's becoming invasive here. Mildly invasive for now. I just see a couple small stands, but with time it could become a real problem. Another invasive, the black locust. Each part of the plant is toxic except for the flowers, but the flowers flower in spring. Also, I would say that the Mediterranean cypress is invasive here, and also the Mediterranean oleander, especially since this is a dark red colored specimen, while the natural color is more closely resembles this pink one. But those, I wonder how they cropped up here, because they seem to be a lot older than this pedestrian boardwalk here, made out from fake concrete boards. After passing on this sky walk here, around the little inconspicuous cap, suddenly it gets very windy. Also look at there, the whole lake, a couple boats. You come here and you have hundreds of windsurfers. Yeah, this northern part of the lake, I don't know if it's always like this, but it's quite popular with windsurfers. It's very different from the southern part right now. Well, I see one windsurfer there, 2, 3, but up here I don't even try to count them. Our goal for today are those rugged areas north of the lake. Lago di Garda has a lot of records, like the northernmost olive growing area in the world, the northernmost caper growing area in the world, the northernmost citrus growing area in the world. And while the citruses and capers are restricted to the shores of the lake, the olive growing area continues several kilometers into the Alps. And that's what we want to experience today and see how far the Mediterranean landscape and the Mediterranean agriculture extends here into the north. A German who is not familiar with the Mediterranean would hardly recognize the holm oak as an oak. It's evergreen and the leaves don't look anything like an oak in Germany. But here you see the little acorns. They used to be an important food for the Stone Age people before the invention of agriculture, and later a famine food. Now they are still an important food. They are being fed to domestic pigs which are being driven into the forest. And of course wild boars also eat them, and then people eat the domestic pigs and the wild boars. Thus the oak acorns are still a very important staple in modern southern European diet, only via the roundabout of the pig. if you're talking about the Judas tree, most people know it just as an ornamental, but it also has an incredibly hard wood, and the beautiful ornamental flowers which pop up in spring are edible and super tasty. They are sour and really nice. I can really recommend that skywalk here. In other areas people pay good money for such stuff, but here you can use it for free. Nice. The cliffs are incredibly high. I don't know if those are 1,000 meters, but definitely 700 to 800. In this respect, Lago di Garda is more spectacular than the other alpine lakes. The invasive Podlaja davidi, a shrub from East Asia. In Germany, before the climate change really hit, it was restricted to warm places like railroads and industrial areas. Now it grows everywhere, but I guess around here, it would probably rather be a bit too warm and too dry for it. Here an Opuntia dilenia has been planted. This is a lot more rare here than Opuntia ficus indica. It has much higher heat requirements. It also can stand a lot more drought and heat, but I've rarely seen it here along the lakes because, yeah, as I said, it has much higher heat and drought requirements. Even in the subtropical Canary Islands, I only see it commonly on the south coast, which are semi-desert. On the north coast, actually, Opuntia ficus indica dominates, just like around here. But the fact alone that Opuntia dileni can survive here even when planted is incredibly amazing. Both have tasty fruits, but both are not in season now. The subtropical agaves also do well when they are planted. They even become invasive on a small scale in some areas here. Here in Agave americana marginata. Here I guess this is more close to the original Americana, and here another marginata. They have been planted, but look, there is already the first escapee. I don't know how this happened, because those obviously haven't flowered yet, but here there are also a couple. Yeah, interesting. Those were not planted, but look, they're everywhere. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 little plants. Maybe they spread from the roots of the mother plant, because they're all very close to the mother plant, just a meter away. And also the one growing next to this, actually there are 2, 3 growing next to this. Yeah, so see, they have been planted here in the Alps, and they are already becoming invasive locally. I mean, it might look interesting now, but if they take over those slopes, those are slopes with an incredibly diverse and rare and valuable natural vegetation. It's nice seeing all those subtropical ornamentals and so becoming, it's interesting seeing those subtropical ornamentals becoming naturalized here, but it's also scary. Yeah, the natural vegetation of the Southern Alps, actually of all the Alps, is incredibly diverse. Here, a couple wild onions, a nice spice when you want to have a snack around here. See this brown plant? That's a parasitic orobanche. Of course, well, probably hundreds of species in the Southern Alps, and also right now almost impossible to identify because already dried up. But yeah, it's just a freak of nature, somebody who doesn't produce anything but sucks on the roots of other plants. See those clumps on the pine trees? Those are the very dangerous processionary butterflies. Well, the clumps are made by the caterpillars of the butterflies. They walk in a long procession, basically looking like a row walking on the ground, and they are covered with very dangerous hairs which can make your skin itch like crazy, and if they get into your eyes or into your lungs, you are in big trouble. Many people in the Mediterranean end up in hospital every year because of those. So folks, learn to recognize the super dangerous processionary nests in the, well, in Germany they are in the oaks, it's a different species, but here in the Mediterranean they are in the pines. See how basic the rock here is? Wherever water comes out of the wall, it forms limestone formations, similar to formations in caves. Of course, those formations are not only being formed in caves, but outside they are usually being quickly overgrown by plants, like over there. This slope is also covered with limestone formations, which were deposited here by the water, but it's covered by plants. Only because you can see that better in caves, and because often they are more intricate limestone formations in caves. They're being associated with caves. But here you can see them in the open, in a busy road. Wherever you see such formations, that means that the soil is, that the water coming out of the ground is incredibly rich in limestone, which is very important for the local flora. It's also important for you, because only if you observe such things, you know what you can forage in a given area. And not only the species, but also even the seasons of foraging, because in a dry limestone area everything will ripen earlier, and also the season will be over earlier than in a more moist area on acidic rock. As a rule of thumb, of course, but still very important to know. When the season is over on the limestone, you can move to the nearby acidic soil areas, and you'll have another season without having to travel hundreds of kilometers or go up a mountain hundreds of meters. As soon as we approach an isolated hotel on the coast, Mediterranean / ornamental vegetation, a carob tree, 2 citrus trees, I cannot recognize which one, a Mexican fan palm, Washingtonia. Well, it could also be a cabbage palm, but I think it's a Washingtonia. A cycas underneath it. Who am I to complain, but somehow I think those beautiful limestone rocks are more beautiful without this pink bunker. More citruses on the terraces of the surf hotel. I think the one in the foreground is a mandarin, but without fruits. And the one behind it and in front of the big fig tree could be a bitter orange. Yeah, as I said, folks, we are here in the northernmost lemon cultivation area in the world. The kaki tree, incredibly popular here in Italy, but it's in season only in late autumn. I love those fruits. They should make an earlier version of them.